earlier just about being kind of wanted or having that mutual kind of relationship, it sounds like the personability of the relationship, like yes, clinical like confidence, but then also connection are also
Yeah.
like kind of part and parcel, kind of a part of the same thing. So, okay. Yeah. And would you say that, would you recognize that about yourself? Like that you're a fairly, that it matters, connection with people matters to you.
I think so. I definitely think that's like a big piece of like, am I wanted in this space that I question a lot? And so it's like if I don't feel wanted in a certain space, I get very unconfident and I get very like anxious or agitated or just like completely unconfident in myself if I don't
Mm.
feel welcomed into a space.
Yeah.
And I kind of then resort back to myself and become very like introverted.
Okay. Yeah. And have you had any experience where um, at your workplace you might have not had a very welcoming kind of situation or felt like the space wasn't hospitable to you?
Yeah, well, there's like a few individuals, my coworkers, and their offices are in a row. So often what they have, I guess you can call it as like the second morning meetings. We have a morning meeting in the morning with like all the staff, but then they'll always go into each other's offices and just like chat and talk about things. And they're, I guess the best way to describe it is kind of clicky.
Mm.
And so like you'd be walking past and you just see like all these coworkers in one office just chatting and having a good time. And it's like other coworkers have been invited to that chat, but like I never was. Like ne I've never
Okay.
been. I was also
Yeah.
talking to another coworker and like one of our coworkers, she moved. And so they had thrown her like a going away party outside of the like clinic and like a bunch of people from the clinic was invited, but like I was never invited.
Mm.
And then I heard about it from like another coworker, like, oh yeah, there was the going away party for like so and so. Yeah, it was really like you should have come. I did this at the whatever. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't invited. Like I didn't even know that there was a going away party for this
Okay.
specific individual. So it's almost like, oh, I don't belong here. I belong around certain
Right.
people, but I don't, you know? Yeah.
I could understand how that would be feel like thin ice a little bit, that it would be I could see how that would feel a little disheartening. Like in a mutual workplace. How remind me, how long is it that you've been in this workplace?
Almost 2 years
Okay.
now. Yeah, like 2021 July is when I started. So almost we're almost coming on to 2 years this upcoming July.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And like thinking about um like even about workplace culture, I mean we can talk about culture in the broad sense of like ethnicity, age, class, or whatever else. We can talk about that, but even workplace culture, like how would you define like workplace culture? Like is it fairly like you described earlier, cliquey, or would you say that like the workplace culture is fairly amicable, like everyone's kind of welcome, or well, how would you define it?
See, yeah, see, that's really interesting because if you ask me, this has been one of my favorite places to work of all the jobs that I've had, and I've had a few. It's very opening, it's very welcoming a lot of
Okay.
the time. I
Yeah.
think it's just like and like it's not that big. That's the thing. Like it's not that big, especially within the addiction counseling like section of it. So a lot of the counselors like are either like in the nicest way ancient, like they've been there for so long,
Yeah.
or they're really new and they just create their own cliques. Like this girl that was leaving, she started after I had already started at the clinic. And so like I was like I guess there before like I trained her. So like
Hmm.
I was there for like quite a while before she started and then she had ended up moving like transferring jobs and they had a whole going away party and I didn't even know about it. Not that like I necessarily would have gone. I probably wouldn't have gone if I'm really
Yeah.
honest. But it's just like the idea of like these people can be really welcoming when they want to be. And like I'm talking about specific coworkers, or they're not when they don't want to be. But like in general, the environment is very welcoming. And like that's where I think it gets confusing. It's because like sometimes I feel very welcomed, and then at other time around specific coworkers, I'm like, am I even welcomed? How
Mm.
welcomed am I? And so it creates
Hmm.
doubt.
Hmm. Hmm. Which it sounds like that doubt kind of like it doesn't just stay on relationships or friendships or connections. It's like all of a sudden it's not just about like the work party or the like saying hi or the little kind of clique in the office like part like hanging out. It's all of a sudden like bleeds into like feeling unsupported or feeling yeah, doubting your clinical practice as well. So yeah, that it
Mhm.
kind of bleeds over into that other space. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could see how that would be a little bit of a difficult situation to navigate. And so, like, do you think so overall workplace culture is fairly open, fairly welcoming? Um, and I'm curious, like, is there anything, would you see any sort of like, and I don't know your workplace at all, right? So like, you know, I don't. But would there be any other sort of like cultural barriers or differences in as far as like they're all pretty young. You mentioned some people are fairly ancient or whatever. Like, are you pretty like are within the same age range, or is there people around there or any other kind of like cultural kind of pieces within there that might be different or a part of that process?
Yeah, it's interesting. Counseling approach, styles of counseling. That's such a big one. And I don't know that we always think about it or like I ever really think about it. But we're moving to in-person counseling sessions, like group therapy for
Yeah.
our like post-COVID, we're going back into in-person, and with COVID,
Yeah.
everything had gone online. So really when it was online, the groups were structured that there is one person that facilitates the material of the group, one person that's like the Zoom master, so they collect the attendance, they like
Mm.
monitor for behavioral issues, technical concerns, all that. They do more of the background. And that's really how it was. And then if you do need the support of your co-facilitator, you'd be like, and like, for example, and Scott, is there anything that you'd like to add to the slide? You know, and it was kind of like
Your
seeking that when you
wingman. Yeah.
needed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. But now with it being in person, they'll tell you don't just, it's not like a Zoom master and a facilitator, it's like co-facilitation.
Okay.
And I'm really realizing that like a lot of these people, a lot of these individuals facilitate groups in ways that like not that I disagree with, but like I don't have similar counseling theories as them or like
Okay.
counseling approach. And it's
Yeah.
really how do I blend my personality and who I am with them. And
Okay.
especially with the individuals that have a stronger personality, they like really take over. Like one thing about me is I tend to be more on the passive side
Hmm.
with like a lot of things. And I'm really working towards like being more assertive, I guess, but like I struggle. Like I'm really passive. And especially with the people who have been there longer, they're like, I've been doing this for ages. Like I was here like pre-COVID, you know, like I'm here after COVID. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're like better than me, but they have
No.
more authority. And I struggle like with people in authority or like have a presence over me. So I tend to
Yeah.
become more passive.
Okay. Yeah. So combination of personality and then the personality, like the counseling style that they gravitate towards, and that might not necessarily jive in yeah, who's leading the group or whatever else. And so yeah, as you mentioned earlier that you're moving to like in-person like counseling and so group therapy, back from the Skype version. And so yeah, there's I guess yeah, being able to jive those personalities and then those therapeutic kind of like styles in that same atmosphere is kind of a little bit of the barrier too. It's not just about workplace and clinical. It actually does impact like your personalities probably is going to gravitate to a different counseling style depending on where your personality is. So I can see that being, yeah, being a bit of like a difference in the community there. So yeah. Do you feel one of the things that you mentioned earlier was overall that there it might be a more beneficial workplace, and we're already talking about personality and different personalities at workplace and confidence. How would you gauge if you were to scale? You said workplace confidence or clinical skills, kind of, and if you were to place your confidence level kind of on a scale of 10 being, I feel like your best day. Like I feel fully confident in this place. Like I'm running this group. I know what's going on. 10 would be the kind of there, 0 would be like clinical skill. And like that would be one of the days where relationships are not jiving and you're feeling fairly like kind of on the outs. And your clinical skill might be questioned or whatever. Where would you place like kind of today or most days in the last while, in the last week at least?
Between 4 to 6. So I would say
Oh,
like the average is right in the middle. On like a not so good day, I'd probably like move towards more of the 4. And then on
okay.
a better day, it'd be towards a 6. But like if I can add a piece, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Is right now I'm applying for practicum. And as a part of my practicum, I need to have like letters of recommendation. And I asked my supervisor to write me a letter of recommendation for my practicum placement. And I like the way that I have to submit them is just like a whole package together via email. And so I asked my supervisor to just send me the letter and I can add it to the package to submit. And I read over like the things that he wrote about me in recommending me to this thing. And it was so positive. And it was like all these like really great things about my clinical ability. And I looked at that and I'm just like, it's like really strange because like if someone else was to rate me on that scale, I would imagine that they put me to like a 7 to 8 at least.
Hmm.
But then like when I
Hmm.
think about myself, I'm like, there's no way I can even be a 7. Like I'd at most be a 6. So it was really interesting when you said that because I just had like this letter in the back of my mind. I'm like, should I go up to like a 7? And then I'm like, no, I don't know that I deserve a 7. So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of an interesting way that I like see it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned that like there's times where you can get a little maybe not too, but you said very introspective too, right? Where you are thinking about yourself and thinking about whatever that a little too much maybe when something's going on in a different way. So yeah, I'm curious. So I'll probably just ask like one ish more questions
Right.
about feeling kind of more confident and then more yourself at the workplace. That's kind of one of the objectives that we want to get to is like feeling more confident, more comfortable. That's fair to say? Confident and
Yeah.
comfortable. Yeah. Okay. Um, within that, you mentioned last time about kind of saying hi being one of your kind of hopes to like make a workplace a little better. Is there anything else like specifically that you'd like to do to, again, we can't always nap relationships are a hard place to set some of these behavioral kind of goals because I mean reaching out and saying hi, that's a good one, right? We don't know if everyone will respond great, but to do
Mhm.
reaching out, that's a great one. I'm wondering if there's any other kind of specific behaviors or things that you want to kind of tweak or work at work.
I don't know if this would be behaviorally specific, and I don't, maybe we
Okay.
can narrow it down together. But
Sure.
one of the things that come up to me is just like adaptability. I tend
Mm.
to very be a little bit more specific and like I like things done a certain way. Like I won't start something if I know I don't have time to finish it because that's just going to cause me stress and I'm just going to be anxious. Like I'll sit there for half an hour if the thing that I'm going to do is going to take me 45 minutes and I won't be able to get it done. Like I will sit there for half an hour and I won't start it because I
Mm.
know I won't be able to finish it. So I think just being able to be a little bit more adaptable will be really important. And I think that's maybe a goal that we could work towards. Just like going back to in person, like group sessions, how do I adapt to someone that might be totally different and have like a totally different perspective and hold space for that, even if I disagree? Because like right now,
Yeah.
I try to, but I think I go like kind of with this resistance of like just shutting down or just
Mm.
letting them take over completely.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I'm curious what that might look like as far as being adaptable in relationships. Like would that be kind of like I don't know, sitting back and listening a little more, or would that be kind of saying your kind of bit and then just like asking what the other side might be? I'm curious what that looks like in your
I
just communication style.
Yeah, I think it'd be more of the latter. I think because I'm more passive, for me, maybe being more adaptable would be also being more assertive because if I'm able to be more assertive, I'm able to speak my truth, like my perspective as well, and have a discussion and be
Yeah,
open
and have
rather
a
than have
difference of
that kind of
opinion.
like, yeah.
and have a difference of opinion and be okay with that as well too, that it doesn't necessarily mean it's speaking to your core of your clinical like competency, that it's okay, this is what I think and you can think differently, and yeah, like
I
a little
think with
bit more
that
of that.
too. Yeah, I think with that too, it also gives me a sense of I can disagree with you and I can see something that you that is uncomfortable for you or you don't like, but we can still be okay and we can still be coworkers and we can still have a form of healthy relationship. And I think that's part of my struggle